Hello viewers, well Forza Horizon 5 is released today. I know many of you have been looking forward to it for some time. Some people had the Ultimate Edition and a few lucky streamers such as myself and others got hold of it last week. But now you can all get your hands on and see what you make of the game. Now for me, I'm just going to start off a bit of the process behind this because it's one of those things where I didn't get to see any kind of preview this year. It's quite interesting. There was a number of streamers and media that didn't get their hands on early on, and I literally got given the game quite late. I didn't even get it for the review window either. So I got given it pretty much the day it was available to the Ultimate users last week, and so I had a first hands on, but not as much time as I would like to say fully review it. But I wanted to make a video for the channel and put it up here. Now I did consider running my full stream that I ran on the 4th of November on here and just popping that up, but then I thought, well, why not just add some edited thoughts and impressions just from that, and then maybe the stream will go up as an unlisted link or something, and you guys can choose to watch it if you'd like to. Forza Horizon has been on a journey. You know, it broke away from the Forza brand, must have been, 2012, something like that. And we had Forza Horizon 1. And in a way, it's kind of a dream to Forza players. We wanted Forza Motorsport sim racing handling in an open world. That was what we were after, and that's kind of what we got to an extent. We were taking that Forza handling, getting it out there and trying something new. But that all sort of went out the window in the second game when you can go across fields in your Lamborghini, and then it started from there to create its own culture and style. And in a way, that's kind of gone on and expanded. There's been a sort of bit of a flow to it, really. But I suppose for me, I've not necessarily been a huge Forza Horizon fan over the years, purely because I guess a couple of issues stood out to me. One was I was never keen on the characters. Hi, how are you? Great to see you here. Wow. It's all very superficial, has no real depth to it on any level. And I don't like the superficiality. I like it when there's a bit of a character and a bit of a story and you develop yourself. I think that's also a bit of an issue with the driving for me, is where it's very much a checkbox. Go here, do race, go there, tick box, do race, go there, get reward card, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. For me, I would like to feel like I go to a race and I start with perhaps a lower car and I build myself up, and the crowds grow and the venues grow and the challenges grow, and you weather yourself with the competitors. You get to know those competitors. When people talk to me about racing, I say it's not just cars going in circles, it's knowing those drivers. It's the drama behind motorsport that makes it exciting. It would be great if you were a Forza Horizon community and there were 5 or 6 other Forza Horizon communities or different factions within those communities, so that you're racing together, so that racing means something. It just doesn't mean anything. And I think that's been one of my issues throughout, where I do it and I think, well, I've done 57 road events and 34 rally events, and I've got a load of irrelevant cars in my garage. That's really nice, that are just, they're so easy to get that they become just meaningless to an extent. And I think that's something where, for me, Forza Horizon hasn't done it for me. But one of my core things really was I was playing Forza Horizon 5, and you set eyes on it and the game is absolutely stunning. I mean, the graphics, the technology, the menus, the sound, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. When you're sitting in the dash cam of these cars, it's amazing, frankly. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some major issues missing, such as particle effects. You can be driving in the rain and dust and dirt coming up and it doesn't touch the windscreen. It takes away the effect entirely. But when you're driving, when it's a dry environment just on your own, there's some nice lighting, the way the dash reflects on the windscreen, really nice. The fluidity, the look of the environments, it's all there. It's all there. I've got something nearly in my... It's all there. So graphics, options, paint your car, photograph it, drive here, see big mountain to jump off, big object to race against, lovely, really nice. It's really exciting, but it's superficially exciting. It's not something that generates it just through the raw driving. And I think for me as a driving fan, that just brings me to the steering input. Now, the steering wheel input is an issue I've had right from the first game, and I went back and looked at one of my original videos reporting this back in 2012, which I'll pop a link to somewhere here. and you'll see a bit of it now. And basically what it is, you turn into a corner, the rear end steps out, you correct, the correction doesn't do anything. Deceleration of any kind, altering throttle response will alter that sliding of the car, that motion. You practically need to stop the car before turning. It just doesn't work. Whereas with a stick, when you're playing with the control pad, flick that stick across and you get a nice bit of opposite lock through the corner. Completely different experience. So I noticed that on the first Forza Horizon. I went back to this game and had exactly the same problem. It wasn't as bad. I'd say it's 90% as bad. Now, the funny thing is that there's two things in common. When I made that video, I looked at the comments from 2012 and I saw comments people saying the game handles perfectly for me. Well, it didn't. It didn't. It's amazing how many of those comments were just absolute nonsense. You look back on them now and you realise people are just talking rubbish. Now there are people who say, well, you can change your wheel settings. So yes, if you take your wheel settings right down, and I tried this as well, I went all the way down through the wheel settings, you can get to a point where you can barely move the wheel, but because the wheel's on such a tight axis, you can get opposite lock and actually control it. Somewhat similar to a control pad, it's just that you're kind of pointy when you're down a straight road, but it means you can get the opposite lock. So you can theoretically fix partially some of those issues, but then it's fundamentally broken because you can't drive. Where you've gone from this really nice driving model for driving down the road from location to location, you end up with this super pointy car just for slidey challenges. It just feels awful. I mean, it feels awful. It's not fun to play or fun to do. It feels awful to drive, and it's one of those things where there's obviously a fundamental problem with the physics, and it's not being fixed. So it's quite funny. You have this group of people that say it handles perfectly, or once I've tuned my wheel, it's perfect. It's not perfect. It's never perfect. That's the point. The problem is with the fundamental handling of the game. You can change your turning circle to minimize the damage that does, but the reality is that it's all a bit of a mess and it's not been looked at for a long time. So then I look at, well, we're a driving game, but we're an arcade thing, really. You have to look at a game like this. It's on a big scale. This game is made by a marketing department. It's committed. I sell it to, how many people play this game use a steering wheel? Well, probably less than 1%. Not because people with steering wheels wouldn't play it, but because, like myself, I would never play Forza Horizon with a wheel again, hardly. Maybe the odd go here and there, but generally speaking, I'd use a control pad because it's pretty awful with a wheel. So then they look at the stats and say, oh, look, 1% of people use with a wheel. And so to them, it's not important. And also, when you look at mass market sales and what's working with people right now, this kind of superficial nature really works well with the type of communities that they want to sell it to, the type of marketing activity they want to run with it on a very large scale. This is very controlled. I mentioned earlier that this game had less access pre-launch than any other. Very controlled now, and that's all just down to the way of marketing, and that's a whole different video. But the truth is that when you've got a driving game, it should work with a wheel. Now, I hear these other people say to me, oh, it's, arcade games. You're thinking iRacing or Assetto Corsa or something. No, arcade games like Outrun, Pole Position, Virtua Racing, Daytona, Sega Rally, Ridge Racer, Dirt Dash, Sega Turbo, Power Drift, Hard Driving, whatever. These were all arcade games that had steering control. Arcade games are the home of steering control, but you don't need realistic handling. What you need is intuitive handling. These are two very different things, and I point this out a lot in racing games. It's getting intuitive handling right, and you need developers who are willing to listen, and that's another thing as well. I went to Playground Games when Forza Horizon 2 came out. I saw this very issue happening with the wheel, and I said, there's a problem with the steering wheel. And one of the designers in charge of the handling said to me, oh no, that's because people are not used to playing the game with a wheel. No, I'm very used to playing the game with a wheel. A lot of these people drive cars, they're putting in the opposite lock, nothing's happening. And he played it and eventually understood himself. Go into that corner and just give a little bit of opposite lock, and nothing happened. He slid straight off the same corner as everyone else. And you'd hope that from there something would get fixed, but it doesn't. So when I see reviews like 10 out of 10 from IGN on a game that doesn't work on a steering wheel, you'd think that's a fundamental. Now, it's, I guess in a way that for the big games companies, I go back to the marketing department. If you take a look at Need for Speed 2015, didn't use steering wheels at launch, didn't even have manual gears. It's funny, isn't it, how the communities react. I remember when Grid 2 was coming out and they took cockpit cam out of the game, and it was like no cockpit, no buy. There was this massive issue about it, and yet you can have games like Need for Speed that don't have manual gears, that don't have steering wheel support launch, the fans stay silent. You can have Forza Horizon, doesn't work with a steering wheel, nobody says a word. I really haven't seen anything hardly on the internet about it until I actually mentioned it, and then suddenly people start coming out the woodwork. So it's funny how you have these big movements that make a load of noise, like the no VR, no buy guys. I mean, they make all the noise in the world, and they really are just half of 1%. I mean, they're not even that. But they do make a lot of noise online, and rightly so, because VR does add a lot to the driving experience, as does the cockpit cam. But it's just the point that there are just some things, manual gears, using a wheel. For me, I'm disappointed because when I drive Forza Horizon 5, I feel I want to be involved in this experience. I like the whole cab driver bit, going from place to place and learning the map and doing all that. And there's lots to see and do there if it all worked right for me. But it just doesn't, and it loses a lot. And as I say, in terms of character and character development and building your character, or even if you want a character, there's no option to say, right, I just want a crash helmet on and be a generic nobody from launch. I don't want to go through the character selection process. Just give me my name and just drive as anything else. But the reality is that this is what sells these days. It's what gets 10 out of 10 in IGN. And there you go. Now, it's quite funny, really. I mean, it's all a marketing world we live in. And I think that's something I'm going to look at another day in terms of the marketing control and how that gets controlled via all of the major publications and brands these days. It really does steer everybody. But we live in a different time now where fame drives sales. I was seeing something the other day, a famous person, wore a dress, and then suddenly thousands of people wanted to wear, thousands of women want to wear that dress. And you think that's the influence. It's the same with games. People do something in a game, and then thousands of people want to buy that in a game, and so on. And it's amazing how it's moved in that way, really. But so it's very much a marketing machine that's brought us to this point of Forza Horizon. And as I say, from a polished production point of view, I mean, obviously there's a few bugs on the PC version. They'll fix those. I think that's down to the general expansion, where it was just an Xbox game. Now they've got to make it work on Xbox One, Series X and so on PC. And don't get me wrong, they've done a great job to get it working on Xbox, and they've done an amazing job and the Xbox Series X version looks fantastic. I mean, it is a stunning looking, sounding game. I just wish they would fix those elements with the steering, but deep down, I would like a bit more meat to the bone of the whole driver journey. I kind of feel like, for me personally, as a driving game, I want to like it more, but it's not what I want it to be. But having said that, it opens the door to Test Drive next year, or whenever Test Drive comes out, next year, the year after. I think if Test Drive does have the WRC style handling, which is light years beyond anything you see in Forza Horizon. I mean, the handling, they've really got some amazing handling in WRC, and there's still work to do, but it's not till you play something like this you realise just how far it is. I mean, Forza handling with a wheel hasn't been great. I mean, it was pretty fun up until Forza 4, but after that, it's all gone downhill. So we look forward, I guess, to the Forza Motorsport next year. I'd say, again, I assume that's next year. Might be the year after. And we look forward to what Turn 10 have in store. They've got to come back strong. And I would love to see it before it's released, to at least give some feedback on it. Credit where it is due if it's good. But if it's not, then it's something that needs work, and they really need to look at it. God knows Forza needs to get its physics and its handling right for the future. Unfortunately, at the moment, because this sells well with Forza Horizon, and because it sells well with the steering issue it has, who am I to argue with that? You know, it's just that I know it could have been so much more with better steering, and there's so much more depth they could give it to make it a more involving experience, and maybe it's just not the game for me. So I will play it from time to time, but there is, as I say, it's one of those things that if I just want to do a tick box and do a generic race here, generic race there, it's great for those generic bits and pieces. But if you're not involved with the stats of it all, then, and you don't have the following to push it, then it's not really, you know, worth actually pushing. I think also a word from me, there haven't been any previews on the channel because unfortunately it is difficult to generate a following on Forza Horizon now. Again, it's very controlled, and that's a conversation for another day. But if you have any questions about it, do let me know. What aspects do you like most? What would you like to see improved in Forza Horizon? You know, where are you in the game? It'd be really good to get your feedback. I mean, the feedback on this channel, on the VV channel, is generally going to be more of a sim racing audience. But as you know, I cover all types of racing games, and it'd be great to get your feedback. And maybe I'm completely wrong and the handling is perfect. Who knows? But it isn't. So there we are. So that's it from me. I may leave you now with a bit of my stream. Why not? Leave you with a bit of my stream playing the game for the first time. And you can watch a bit of that, some highlighted elements, and maybe it's going to be expansive, I don't know. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon. Hello viewers, well thanks for watching the video today. Do like and subscribe, it supports what we do. Do become a YouTube member. YouTube Patreon supports all of our content you see on the channel, and of course lots of gaming from retro to modern games. I love it all in terms of racing action. So click on one of the two videos just there to find out more.